Matt, good to see you again.
Likewise.
Back to the Navien booth another time.
Absolutely.
Walk us through what we got. You've got a new unit that you're about to release, have released. Tell us the story behind this unit.
So this is going to come out later this year. This is something that is called a system furnace.
Okay.
So about a year ago, we launched a product that was called an NPF furnace, which is essentially a boiler with a hydronic coil built into it, so that we can do the full heating for a house with the hydronic coil, and it's a standalone unit, not need a separate heat source to it. So about a year ago, we launched a product, came available in a 60, an 80, and 100,000 BTUs. And new coming later on this year is this, which is a system version of that. And what you'll see outside the box here, we've added these two pipes, and now what that allows us to do is actually supply the heat to indirectly heat the domestic hot water from that house.
Gotcha.
So once available, this is going to be available in at least a 100,000 BTU unit. We might come out with some additional sizes as well. Great, small, compact footprint to that. Really high efficiency, about 97.5% efficiency on that system.
Gotcha. So the idea behind this is take your furnace out, take your rental water heater out, or your water heater that you own, drop this in place, and that would be the replacement.
Absolutely.
Now, the indirect is being paired with the unit. Are you guys making that selection? Do I have my own choices? Like I can say I want a 40, a 60, and 80. Like how do they get paired?
Yeah, you can use different size tanks. This particular tank is actually a Navien built tank, so when we do launch that, you will be pairing it with tanks, so we will make those available. We'll have a couple different sizes. We haven't figured out exactly which sizes it will be at, but like you said, most likely 50, 60, 80 is what it's going to go for.
Yeah, you're going to size that based off the domestic load. You and I aren't going to decide standing in a booth looking at a show. It's got an integrated 10K sensor in the well, so that's going right back to the furnace. It's communicating to it.
Absolutely. So you can use an aquastat or a tank sensor on there. One of the nice features with all the NPF furnaces as well as the system furnace is this front panel has a very intuitive startup wizard, and it walks you through the startup, and it'll actually ask you if you're using an aquastat or using a sensor.
Right. Looking for resistance versus a close contact.
Exactly.
Now, from the standpoint of this unit, is it pretty universal? Like what kind of installation options do I have? Like left, right return, bottom, top?
At the top, your supply is only at the top. We do have a horizontal version of a furnace over here. We haven't decided yet if the system furnace will also be made in horizontal. At the beginning, at first, it's just going to be your upflow unit. But absolutely, you can do the return on the right side, on the left side. If you're doing a 5-ton system, you can have a double drop coming down. And it's also designed so that you can do the return on the bottom.
Cool.
So you can't do the back. But we do also have a return air box to bring that up a little bit to increase the amount of return air space that we have available. Okay,
very cool. Well, also a good unit. Now, we were talking about this a little bit. It's an air conditioner. It's a really unique looking air conditioner.
Correct. So this will be brand new, coming out later this year as well. This will be available in two sizes. We're going to have a 3-ton and a 5-ton. And we're calling this the Hydro AC. So pretty unique thing on this is if you look at the back over here, you'll see we've got a typical kind of hose bib, garden hose connection at the back, and it goes to a 1/4-inch water line. So you can have water hooked up to that as an option to greatly increase our efficiency. What you're looking at is without water connected to it, you're going to have SEERs around 18. When we hook up that water, we're still waiting for the final test criteria to make sure that we can properly advertise SEER with that water. But we'd be looking around close to about 30 SEERs what we're targeting.
So you guys have a really small makeup water connection that goes to the AC, and are you misting that water across the coil to increase the efficiency?
Correct. So over on this side here, you'll actually see all the different kind of misting heads to that. And you'll also see this little hidden black component there. And what that does is actually treat the water to make sure that if you are in areas with a bit of hard water to it, that's going to treat it to make sure that we don't calcify that coil in there and have issues with that water quality on the systems.
Very cool. Well, I mean, it's a cottage industry on YouTube where the really smart engineers have understood that you can take a traditional AC unit, mist cool water over it and increase the efficiency. You guys have actually developed a product that'll do that, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, some unique coatings, different patents, stuff that will.
That's every time I see somebody DIYing something on YouTube, going, I don't think you really understand what else you're putting on your coil.
It's a lot more. We've seen people be like, "Oh, we'll just hook up a sprinkler and spray."
I've seen it.
There's a lot more to it than just that.
We definitely don't want to see premature coil failure. It's a cool concept. I'm sure there's a lot of applications for that. Last year, we were looking at this unit. I was hoping we could just sort of recap on it.
Yeah, so last year when we were at the show, we had a 60 and a 100,000 BTU unit available. We did increase that lineup and actually added an 80,000 BTU lineup really recently.
Yeah.
One of the reasons for that is the the amperage draw, especially with retrofits. The 60 was able to use a 15 amp breaker. The 100 was on a 20 amp breaker.
Gotcha.
So we've made it so that the 80 unit, the one in between, can get away with that 15 amp breaker for quicker retrofit applications on there. New to this show this year, though, just behind our venting, there's a case coil. So that's going to come out in this summer for us. Multiple different sizes available to meet different applications.
So this will allow a direct tie-in to the AC unit we were looking at, or a heat pump.
Correct.
Gotcha. Yeah. And this is a heating only, no domestic, right?
Correct.
This is the first generation.
And with that, we're going to have the coil matches for efficiency and make sure they're, all the customers are getting our rebates and so on.
Gotcha. Now in the future, do you see this maybe being replaced by the unit we just looked at that can do the heating and the domestic, or is there a really strong play for a heating only appliance?
All depends on what that customer needs. You know, if we're looking at new construction going into it, that would be a great way to spec it.
Yeah.
You know, if the customer recently had a new water heater installed, they're probably not going to want to change that out.
Yeah.
So if just their furnace goes down, they want to replace just the furnace, great option for those customers to use this.
I like the combi application, but I also like the standalone application. In the United States, it's very rare, but in Canada, there's a large rental market.
Yep.
And there's this misconception of like, well, people can't afford a water heater, so they rent it. It's like, no, water heaters aren't very resilient, will be the term that I use. Yep. And I would much rather have one on like a $30 rental that if something goes wrong with it, needs to be replaced, gets taken care of. In the same token, I don't really want to be involved in renting this per se. Yep. I might want to own this as an asset because it's going to last a really long time.
Absolutely. Rental makes sense for some customers. It's not for everyone, but depending on their financial situation, that's where it can definitely help people out.
Now, what have you guys learned since you've been putting this out? Any interesting findings on where it's being applied or how it's being used?
We've seen some interesting installation user errors that were kind of not anticipated at first. We've updated our manuals.
Was it all flex duct off the top?
Some other things. One of the things that we like to remind installers, and one of the recent changes is reminding people that is a hydronic coil on the side there.
Okay.
Don't put
a
screw into wood screw on the side of the unit, or you might
That's
have
a common mistake,
a
as much as we joke about it,
So the nice thing with that, if you look at that unit, you'll see that factory formed flange already coming up, and
I see that.
The manuals, all literature really says make sure you're screwing into the flange and not going down into the coil, just to help protect it.
Yeah. Did you discover any unique markets where this was like a perfect fit?
We've seen different features kind of appealing to different customers in different areas.
Okay.
So one of the big things that we've seen is if somebody is a boiler guy and they're used to hydronics, they're a wet head as we would often call them, they see that right away and they see the advantage of that, and heating with water, doing that lower temperature is a higher comfort to a lot of customers. And so that has really sold itself really well with a lot of our customers that are existing. Another thing that we've had when people come by and say this is great, I don't have to worry about CO as much as in a house and potential for it to go wrong. Not it's that common, but at the front of this, you have basically a sealed kind of a vestibule wall where your combustion is taking place. So with that, you don't have as much of a concern if something went wrong, how bad it could potentially get from that customer.
Right.
The other thing that's actually been pretty neat with this, and we've seen some customers switch to this product versus some of the other furnaces they're using, is the noise. This is a much quieter furnace than a lot of traditional systems. And one of that is back to that sealed vestibule. The combustion is happening out here outside of that airstream, so you don't have that, that jet going into that. So very quiet, very comfortable. Doesn't dry out the air the same way as traditional furnace with that lower temperature. And a lot of customers are loving the customability on that front screen. If we had the cover off, this is actually on there's a hinge design to it, so you can actually pop it up.
You can see it while you're working on it.
Quickly do all your programming. Very limited dip switches, that sort of stuff for that product.
I mean, it's a cool unit because it's a hydronic furnace, but at the end of the day, if you've done furnaces, you're going to figure this out. I mean, it's got a relief on it, that's unique to it, but other than that, don't put any screws into the coils. We joke about a 3-inch screw. It doesn't take a very long screw to get into that. But otherwise, it's a pretty cool installation.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt.
No, thanks for stopping by.